I had a test done. This was, I'm going to say December last year. And total test was at 648 nanograms per deciliter, which was considered optimized according to Inside Tracker's ranges anyway.
Yeah, I would agree too.
But my free test, Inside Tracker says free test, they have a normal range which starts at 4.6 and then they go up to an optimal which ends at 22. And mine was at 9. So I think you and I spoke and I said to you, is a free test of 9, should I be concerned with that? Is it too low? And we spoke about possibly supplementing with boron and seeing if that would increase free test. Right. So talk to me about boron, and I guess also whether someone with results like mine where total test was at 648 and free test was at 9, if those numbers are good.
Right. So first on boron, the idea with boron, what it does is potentially have a suppressive effect on SHBG. But I've tried to dive into literature and see, and it seems like it has more of a binding effect to SHBG. So potentially binds and then takes that spot on the SHBG so that testosterone can be liberated. Because oftentimes you don't see SHBG decrease. In fact, I saw yours actually increase, right?
Well, this is the interesting thing. So I did 8 weeks. I think I was doing 6 milligrams a day. That was the dose,
pretty
right?
standard.
Yeah. And my SHBG went up from 39 to 60, which they flagged as high.
Right.
Total test went up from 648 to 739, which was like a 13% increase. And free test just stayed exactly the same. So if anything, because my total test went up, now my free test as a percentage of total test is actually down.
Right.
I don't know if that's a problem because it's probably more like the absolute amount that matters.
Yeah. And again, when on your first question as to a guy has similar levels to you, first and foremost, I'd ask like, how do you feel on that? And I think most people looking out would be like, you epitomize what they would want to be. You know, you're
like I feel great.
Yeah.
I feel strong in the gym. I have a high sex drive.
Yeah. You're motivated. You're successful. You know, you're lean, muscular, strong. You said you have a high libido. So, I mean, why would you need to increase? You know, so if you felt good to begin with, I wouldn't get too hung up on the number.
I think it was psychological. You see the range and you think, okay, I'm in what is considered normal / optimal, but it's not like right at the far right.
Right.
Should I be optimizing? And what I'm hearing from you is you might make changes, get these 10, 15% increases, but not have any change in subjectively how you're feeling.
Right. And did you?
No.
Yeah. So did anything change?
Nothing
Good
changed.
or bad?
Nothing changed. Except for total
numbers.
test went from 648 to 739.
So now psychologically too, you're probably a little bit distressed, like, oh no, I'm now out of the optimal range of free. And that's why I don't, in one way, like the endocrinologist will say, without symptoms, don't test. I don't agree with that because I think everybody should have this autonomy. And I like, you know, just being able to give people the ability to look inside their body and see where their hormones are. But it also becomes problematic when you don't understand the nuances. And then some of these TRT clinics have like red and green only on their ranges. So like on yours, you would be all in red because your testosterone wasn't up to 600. So they see that and they're like, red? Like I'm in red on testosterone because they think 601 and higher is green. Like I must need testosterone because I'm in red. And it's so like...
Oh, that's what they're doing at the clinics?
Yeah. I mean, similar. I mean, Inside Tracker's pretty good. At least they have this range of like, you know, red to orange, yellow, red, you know. But a lot of the clinics will put you in what they deem suboptimal. And then you're thinking, oh, these are the reference ranges for all of my peers. Like I'm in the red, I'm bad, I need TRT. And they've just psychologically convinced themselves when they just went down the rabbit hole to see where they're at. But now they're feeling the symptoms because they're like, well, maybe, you know, that one time I was a little stressed out with that really hot girl and I went limp, you know, so I must have looked to you. So it's like, it's hard because so many guys run into this issue day in and day out.
The other interesting thing on that latest blood test I did, and this might be because of the time. So I had a mobile phlebotomist come out and they came at 5 a.m. So I was testing at like 5:20, super early. My cortisol was considerably higher.
Right.
I also had moved from Australia to LA. There's a bit happening stress-wise, but the cortisol had gone up from like 15 to 23 and they flagged that as like pretty high.
Right.
And I wondered if there was any evidence that boron could do that or if that is likely just because I did my testing so early in the day.
I would say likely because you did your testing first thing in the morning. This happens all the time. And then unfortunately, very unethical people will, read that and then convince them that they need all these adaptogens and everything to lower your cortisol, when the fact is, like, cortisol is fluctuating all the time. If you did this a few hours later, you'd probably be normalized. We know cortisol spikes first thing in the morning to wake you up, to increase your body temperature, wake you up. So I went and bank. The moral of the story on all the hormones, you can't make any inference off of just one reading. That's for sure. You should get multiple readings. And then you should really go, particularly in like testosterone, for example, subjective is so very important because, as we mentioned, some people have a 200 and feel great. Other people have a 500 and feel awful. And so neither one of those people should be told that they either need or don't need, because they really need to be looking at the subjective feelings of that person. And everybody's different.
I heard Peter Attia once talk about something that he uses with certain patients who have a low free test, was supplementing, well, not supplementing, it's probably the wrong word to use here, prescribing Anavar. And I believe he said he would use 10 milligrams 2 or 3 times per week, and that would lower SHBG.
Right.
And in doing so would increase free test.
Correct. Yeah, it can. So oxandrolone, Anavar is the brand name, oxandrolone is the generic name, is an anabolic androgenic steroid in oral form, very popular in bodybuilding communities, especially in cutting phases or in female athletes. One of its main mechanisms of action is a very strong suppression of SHBG, liberating or increasing the levels of free testosterone. So it can be used in that way. One thing I would caution people with is that it is an androgen, and in that feedback loop, there are some androgen suppressing effects. And so if you take an androgen, oftentimes without a testosterone base, you run the risk of suppressing your natural production. Not only that, but that androgen is not being aromatized into estrogen. So some guys will go on like an oral only Anavar cycle, and they have their androgens met through the Anavar, but they don't have the estradiol, and they feel awful. And it's terrible for their cardiovascular system, for their neurological system. So bodybuilders all know if you're going to do anabolic steroids, you need a testosterone base. So I think it works really well in individuals already on TRT. I would caution people not on TRT to probably not do it. There are a few studies where low doses of Anavar taken alone didn't suppress LH and FSH, but in practice, you see guys come in suppressed all the time because a lot of guys want to not pin, but they want the steroid results. So oral only cycles are very popular in younger guys because they don't want to pin yet, and they get some Anavar online, they take that and they come in and their testosterone's at 0. So it happens all the time.